I got a little Tuesday recap action going here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I see the internet is lagging right out of the chute, which augurs poorly. The big news out of yesterday, Damian Lillard, this is per Shams Charania on Twitter, has sustained a deep vein thrombosis. That's also known as a DVT. It's a blood clot in his right calf. Lillard is on blood thinning medication, which has stabilized the blood clot and will continue with regular testing. He is out indefinitely. Yeah, that's a pisser, man. He's already missed a couple of ball games here. We were told that it was just a mild calf issue. This is obviously much larger than a mild calf issue. And one would assume that given the regular season is really only like 2.5 weeks, roughly, at this point, I'd be beyond surprised if Lillard was playing again during this regular season. I don't know what this means for playoffs. If the Bucks make a really deep playoff run, you might see him again. But they're going to be extremely careful about what happens here because, and without getting too much into the specifics of it, if you have a blood clot that develops that they don't find, it can be thrown. That's the term. You throw a clot, and it can end up in much more dangerous places. It's why Chris Bosh's career ended, because they found out that he had a congenital issue that was causing it. Now, if this turns out to be just a one-time thing, okay, that's great. The calf is an area where they do tend to happen due to long flights and things of that nature. That's a spot that could be susceptible to it. So we'll hope for now. And Dame's been in the league long enough where it feels like if this was a thing that was going to pop up multiple times, we probably would have seen it. But I don't know. I'm not a doctor. All I know is that I'm married to a doctor, and when we've talked about DVT stuff in the past, mostly Chris Bosh was the one that came up, she was like, yeah, like he could die. So they're going to be very careful here. To that end, I would assume that Dame is probably a drop. If you're in a roto league and you can just stash him somewhere, that's kind of a different thing altogether, obviously. But if you're in your playoffs and you're thinking, oh, maybe I'll get one game out of this guy, yeah, you're probably not going to get it. On the other side of it, in the 3 games that Dame has missed here lately, Gary Trent Jr. has 6 steals and 13 3-pointers. He doesn't do much else, and he never really has done much else. But for Trent, it's always been about whether or not he could have enough usage to be fantasy relevant. And so far this year, he really hasn't been all that close to it. But over these 3 games, again, without Dame, he's taking 11 shots a ball game. Is 11 enough? I'm inclined to say not quite. In looking at last year, Trent took 12 shots per game in Toronto, and he was ranked outside the top 140. It was 14 points, 1.1 steals. That was in about 28 minutes per ball game. Yeah, like, you could look at the last week and say, oh, things are going pretty well for him. He's number 21 in all of fantasy basketball. But he's also committed 0 turnovers over these games. I think 1 week actually pushes him. Yeah, it's exactly these 3 games we were talking about. So the scoring is pretty high. He's shooting 49% over that stretch. He's made 8 3-pointers or 8 free throws, 18 points, 2 steals per game. There's a lot of unsustainable stuff going on there. But, of course, we're not talking about an 82-game season right now. We're talking about a couple of weeks. Could he run warm for the remaining 2 weeks of the season and take a dozen shots a game and make 45, 46, 47% of them? Yeah, it's very conceivable. He's unquestionably going to be more open on the Bucks than he was on the Raptors the last couple of years. But at the same time, he's never had a season where he shot better than 44.5%. So you have to assume that at some point, the numbers are going to level off and that he needs more like 12, 13, maybe even 13.5, 14 shots to be a top 100 or better guy. Then again, what are you doing with your roster slot that Dame was? There are some injury replacement guys out there that I think maybe are a little bit more interesting than Gary Trent Jr., but they may not last the rest of the season. So that's the discussion I think you got to have in your mind. Do I go Gary Trent, who could be, like a top 125 probably range guy, 3s and steals specialist with some good free throw numbers for probably the remaining 3 weeks? Or do I go with one of the guys we're about to talk about on the show who might only give me a game, 2 games, and just keep rotating that slot? I lean towards the rotation, but I'll admit I could be talked into the other one. Good people of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, welcome to the program. I am Dan Besbris. Please hit that subscribe button as you're settling in. Also, feel free to like the show on YouTube or rate it on iTunes or Spotify. You can find me on social media at Dan Besbris on Twitter and at Old Man Squad on the Blue Sky Network. And March Madness fires back up again. Now, actually, you guys got your couple of downtime days. And BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and the number one source for betting on all the madness. Even if your bracket went bust, BetOnline has more ways to stay in on the action with a free Sweet 16 bracket. I can talk. With a $50,000 purse attached to it and live in-game betting on every remaining tournament game. BetOnline has the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to now starts tomorrow. Baseball opening day, hockey, MMA, pro basketball, NBA. And that's why BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more on every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Next important thing I want to talk to you guys about is this. My second child turned 5 yesterday. Happy 5th birthday. This is what I sent out on social to this vibrating, joyful hurricane who stopped running just long enough to get a photo snapped. Our Theodorable, Theo Bio, is 5. And this picture is ridiculous because he was wearing a Minions costume and he took everything off except the suspenders and decided to wear rainbow boots, traipsing around with a giant 5 balloon. We love you, little buddy. We're super proud of you. I know I talk a lot about my older kid on the show because he's playing all the sports right now, but Theo has now expressed interest in getting into baseball as well, and Dad is about to be very pleased if I'm playing baseball with all of my children at the same time. On the fantasy side, here's your Tuesday recap notes, your ads from Tuesday. We'll go through this stuff here again one by one. We got the ads, we got the very closes, and we got the watch list guys. Every once in a while, I'll throw a name in of someone that I say is a permissible drop, but I don't know that we have any of those from yesterday. Your ads: Dennis Schroeder, Kai Jones, Najee Marshall, Spencer Dinwiddie, Brandon Pajemski, Scottie Pippen Jr., Keon Ellis, and Ty Jerome. A lot of these names have been on the show before, but I wanted to make sure that anybody that was remotely fringy, anytime they play, and I think they need to be on your roster, I will remind you of it. So Dennis Schroeder, who, yes, we already talked about a couple days ago on the show, is your Cade Cunningham replacement. He didn't exactly destroy yesterday, but the Pistons did, and so that game was over by midway through the third quarter. So Schroeder only had to play 23 minutes, which obviously long-term is not enough minutes, but 7 points, 6 assists. He's basically an assists specialist while filling in for Cade. But when he gets the full 30-some-odd minutes of a more competitive ball game, he'll give you a dozen or more points. He'll give you probably 1 steal, maybe 1 3-pointer, and pretty good free throw shooting as well. So I think Schroeder's a guy you could start in most formats while Cade Cunningham is dealing with his soft tissue injury. And on top of everything else, maybe the big key here on why Schroeder is a good pickup is that the Pistons have a 5-game lead over the Hawks to drop out of the play-in spot. They've caught the Bucks. They're actually tied for the 5 seed, and they're only 2 games back at the Pacers. So yes, you could argue that they want to try to push farther up the board, but I think that Cade's health is kind of paramount and more important than any of the other stuff going on, because again, they're not going to fall back into the play-in. And as of right now, like, what's the difference here for Detroit? If things finished now, they'd have the Knicks in the first round. If they moved up 1 slot, they'd have either the Bucks or the Pacers. It would be the Pacers right now. Do you badly want Pacers instead of Knicks? I don't know, maybe. Knicks seem kind of eminently beatable without Jalen Brunson. It's why they're falling back towards the pack here lately. But anyway, is that more important than getting Cade healthy? I doubt it. Kai Jones, I wanted to put back on the board again. Mavs played 2 games in a row, and I felt like we might as well just put him on there for 2 games in a row. No Anthony Davis in this one. Also no PJ Washington. Kai Jones still played only 24 minutes in a blowout loss, which I don't know if that was a massive factor, but he had 9 points, 8 boards, a steal, and a block. He's shown an ability to make pretty much all of his shots from the floor. He made his free throws again in this one. Kai Jones, not a great reality basketball player, but turning out to be a pretty solid fantasy player. So he should be on rosters, especially if you need big man stuff. And a lot of us do. Next name on the list is Najee Marshall. I also put Spencer Dinwiddie in there. Again, we've talked about them a few times. Not that Najee's not on your roster, but just in case you kind of forgot about him with their 2-game week last week. He requires no explanation. Dinwiddie requires an explanation, but we've done it a bunch of times, and I kind of feel a little bit stupid about doing it again, but we'll just knock it out super fast. Spencer has been running crazy hot. He cooled off a little bit in this ball game, but not like painfully cold. Still had 13 points. Didn't shoot the ball as well, but ended up with 2 blocks, which kind of, in a small way, saved the fantasy line. Did have 7 assists. He's going to be the guy that gets assists right now. Even when Anthony Davis is back, that might even help Dinwiddie on the assist side. Probably not going to have as much usage as the team gets healthy with PJ and AD back. And, a return of Gafford or Derek Lively wouldn't really change the usage situation, and no one's coming back in the backcourt. So Dinwiddie does belong on rosters. I remain extremely, extremely nervous about what happens when he cools off hard, but he's starting, and he's the point guard. And a starting point guard in the NBA is pretty much a guy that should be rostered on like 97% of teams. I say 97 because I'm sure there's one team out there that has a starting point guard that we don't want anything to do with. I just don't know which team it is. Brandon Podziemski I put back on the list, and he's kind of like one of the only Warriors to survive getting mauled by the Heat in yesterday's ball game, the Jimmy Butler return to Miami contest. But Podziemski's a guy that should be on rosters even when Steph is playing. Moses Moody is the guy that I'm a little bit, unsure of. I like the 13 shots. He was terrible in yesterday's game. I do think Moody is probably a playable dude with Steph out, and I think he's in the very close list on today's show. But Podziemski's a guy that definitely needs to be on rosters. Scottie Pippen Jr. has retaken that starting job, which for a while in Memphis, they get a little funny with what they're doing, the Grizzlies do. I don't always understand it, but they're 44-28, so I guess it's working out all right. Sometimes it's Luke Kennard. Sometimes it's Pippen getting the start when John Morant is out. Right now, it's Scottie Pippen Jr., and he's been great lately. Rebounding, passing, steals, blocks. Even the field goal percent was good for this ball game, although you can't count on that every day. And then Kennard only got 24 bench minutes in this ball game, which was also kind of confusing because he'd basically been the sort of floor spacing, start the offense point guard with Ja out. But it's Pippen right now, so make sure he's on your roster. And luckily, I picked him up in like every league a week and a half ago, and I can just let it ride. And dude was critical for my team winning my head-to-head finals the other week, so that was also kind of fun. Back to Sacramento for Keon Ellis. He's the start as long as Malik Monk is out. That's a pretty easy one. He's going to get you a ton of steals, some out-of-position blocks, and some three-pointers. And then Ty Jerome, obviously a play anytime that Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell sits. He only played 21 minutes in this one, which was, I think, lower than we would have hoped, but still had 25 points in 21 minutes. So he's just out there to get his, and he got it. So good work by Ty Jerome. Commercial break time. I'm remembering to do it. And a reminder for you guys to subscribe, and then we'll be back for the very close board and the watch list right after this. I think I can do this by just scrolling down. Oh, no, I got to click a button. There it is. All right, your very close names are not all that robust. Only 5 of them coming out of the Tuesday card. Cam Payne, who I guess has decided he wants to go by Cam and not Cameron. I don't know. That's how he's getting listed these days. I like to call him Cameron Payne because just calling him Cam Payne sounds like I'm saying the word campaign. He was awful yesterday for the Knicks, played 30 minutes and did nothing. Remember I talked about there's probably a starting point guard you don't want? That would have been Payne yesterday. But in general, if Cam Payne, and I'm saying it in that sort of a halted fashion so that you guys know I'm talking about the player and not me campaigning, By the way, he's listed as Cameron Payne on Yahoo. Maybe that's the way we go. If he gets 30 minutes, he is an assists and threes streamable level player. That's always been the case for Payne throughout his career, where he has sort of bumbled his way into 30 starting minutes from time to time. Usually it requires multiple injuries, as it has this season. But when he gets 30, he gets assists and he gets 3-pointers. His field goal percent has been historically very bad when he plays larger minutes. I don't expect that will change. He's not much of a steals guy. I don't expect that will change. He's not much of a rebounder, and he definitely doesn't block shots. I think he had like 4 all of last season. That's not going to change either. He is a 2-trick pony because he also doesn't really shoot free throws. He'll make them if he got them. He just doesn't get them. He's averaging 0.7 a game. He'll probably be around maybe a little over 1 in a starting role, I would think. But it's minimal. And you can look at previous seasons. It's the same stuff. He has 2 free throws in his 2 starts. Miles McBride is going to have to remain out. Jalen Brunson still sounds like he's not ultra close. Improving, but not ultra close. And, if you look at the previous game, the win over Washington, that's, I think, more what you can expect out of Payne going forward. 13 points, 7 assists, 4 of 12 shooting. He did have 3 threes. He did manage to get a steal, which is a win. If it happens, you just count your blessings. But most of the time, you hope for like 10, 11 points, 6 assists, and a couple of 3-pointers, and that's what you're going to get, which makes him, in my opinion, very close to an ad, and probably an ad on teams where you're hard streaming those categories, but otherwise not so much. And it's a similar situation with Moses Moody right now, who probably does belong on rosters if you need threes and steals, but I don't know that he does if you don't. Santi Aldama is one that's not quite the same explanation as the others here in this very close list, because when he gets significant playing time, he's not really a specialist. He'll score, he'll rebound, he'll pass, he'll get some defensive stats. Percentages have not been his strong suit, but they're better this year. Specifically, field goal percent has been a lot better this year than in seasons past. And so we're kind of looking for about 25 minutes out of Aldama. When he's gotten 25 or more, he's been startable. When he's been under 25, he's been not quite there. I think he's worth rostering. I mean, mostly because Ja is out, but also because all season long he's been hovering right around the edge of the top 100, and that's a startable level guy. And we just have to kind of hope that he'll play in any back-to-backs that pop up for Memphis. So, although I don't think they have one here for a little bit, their schedule is on the light side these days. And I'm looking back, I think he played in their last back-to-back, and then he was hurt for a little bit and missed both halves of the one after that. But again, when he's going and he's at 25 minutes, he's a 5-6 category guy. So I'm leaning towards yes on Aldama, just because the upside is better than a lot of these other guys that we've talked about, who are like, if things are breaking right, they're good at 3 categories. And for Aldama, if things are breaking right, it's a lot of them. Kyle Filipowski, I cannot get him off the board entirely because ignoring him would be foolish. And he did start alongside Walker Kessler in this same game that Utah got blitzed by the Grizzlies in. But when Kessler's out there, he's the guy that's getting the rebounds. And if Filipowski's not getting rebounds, there isn't a whole lot left. Some points and some threes, but the way that he elevates himself is by making it points, threes, and boards, which is a fun combination to get out of a big man. But he only had 2 rebounds in 25 minutes in this last ball game, and Walker Kessler had 9. Admittedly, the Grizzlies didn't miss many shots, so there were very few defensive rebounds to go get. Utah got out-rebounded 52-28, by the way, in this ball game, and outshot 98-78. With the free throws relatively even, that's not a game you're going to win. So I still think I'm probably sitting on only play Filipowski when Kessler is out, which makes him kind of an impossible play in head-to-head. In games cap, they got a Houston-Denver back-to-back coming up. Kessler's going to sit one of those 2. I don't know which one. I would assume he misses the first, because then he'll have 2 off days before Denver and then 2 off days again before Charlotte if he plays in that ball game. And if you're looking at the standings and trying to figure out, does Utah badly need to lose more games? They're only 1 game off being tied with the Wizards for the worst record in the NBA, which does matter. They have the same percentage of getting the number 1 pick, but if they get jumped by teams, if you're the worst record, the worst pick you could get is 4th. And you'd rather be 4th than 5th, would you not? I would. And then Alex Caruso, he's on our watch list. How many times has he been on the damn watch list this year? I'd love for him to be above it. He filled in for Chet Holmgren and played full starters minutes in OKC's game over the weekend. He played 23 and a half minutes in their win over the Kings and had 15, 5, and 6 with 2 blocks and 2 3-pointers. Caruso is a fantasy gold mine when he gets to 23, 24 minutes. That's all it takes. He's number 121 in 9-cat in 19 minutes a game this year, but 19 ain't enough. We need him to be in the 20s consistently, and he just hasn't been this season. Yes, a lot of his value is tied up in defensive stats. I'm fully aware of that. He's at 2.2 defensive stats in 19 and a half minutes a game. 1 3-pointer. 7 points, 3 boards, 2.5 assists. That's like, punt points, he's extremely important. But if you're not punting points, he's a tougher one. But if suddenly he starts playing 24 minutes or more, that's a very different thing. What I think is happening here is we've sort of gotten lucky with Caruso on player absences around him. Cason Wallace has missed a couple of ball games. Jalen Williams has missed a couple of weeks. Chet Holmgren sat out the last one for the Thunder. And so that opened up a whole bunch of sort of small big man versus big guard spot, which I think often gets referred to as the wing, but OKC has so many interchangeable pieces that I don't know what we would call it. And Caruso was the guy to pick up some of those extra minutes. So he picked up some Jalen Williams minutes, and he picked up some Cason Wallace minutes, and he picked up a bunch of Chet Holmgren minutes. And 2 of those 3 guys were still out for this ball game. And that's why Caruso was up at 23 instead of 19 or 20. So he's close, but we got to have the right guys missing. And I don't know if they will be for OKC's next ball game, which is tomorrow. They host the Memphis Grizzlies. Should be a fun one. If the right guys are out, it's going to be a high-scoring affair. Up and down we go. And that might be a fun Alex Caruso plug-and-play. But I don't see how you could sit on him in any unlimited games format. And, with Roto, it'd be hard to pick him up a day in advance when there are all these other guys floating around. The watch list, commercial break, then watch list. YouTube, you know what to do. Anthony Black is the first name on the watch list because he's had a couple good ones in a row. 20 points and 5 boards here. And more than the actual production, it was the number of shots he took in this game that caught my eye. He took 18 shots here, which I believe is a season high. He took 10 in Orlando's win over the Lakers and made 7 of them. And so that one didn't really jump off the page to me. I know he had a good stat line of 17, 5, and 6, but we also know he's not going to shoot 70%, which he had done 2 of 3 of 4 games, actually, leading up to that Laker one. Now, in this one, he didn't shoot the ball all that well, but he was out there just jacking up shots wildly. By the way, it ties his season high in shot attempts. He did it on January 12th against Philadelphia as well. I don't expect him to get 18 shots a game, but if he suddenly starts pushing into double digits, that's something to take note of, because he did it a few times when Franz and Paolo were out. And it was kind of like this, well, is he streamable for like points, boards, assists, and steals? Maybe. He's a low percentages guy. He doesn't take many 3-pointers. I know he has 5 in his last 2 games, but I don't expect that to stick much, because I think that's the most he's had over any 2-game span all season long. And, free throws are not good. 75% better this year than last year, which was 61, but still only 75, 42.5 from the field. You've got to be very good in the counting stats to cover up bad percentages. And it's going to take probably in the neighborhood of around a dozen shots to get him there. So if he starts reliably getting to that 11, 12, 13 mark, okay, I will happily take another look, because he can board, he can pass, he can get steals. He's actually not a bad shot blocking guard. He's like he'd probably be around half a block, 0.6 blocks in bigger minutes, which like pretty consistently he'll get you 1 if he's playing starters minutes every other game or so. But the steals are there. We know that. And it's just going to come down to whether he's going to be a usage guy. 3 games does not convince me that he is, but he does make the watch list. Max Christie's on the watch list on the chance that he warms back up again with a gravity player on the floor nearby. He just hasn't had anybody to pull defenses. And you saw it in this one. He went back to being terrible again, a game after hitting a bunch of shots with Anthony Davis and PJ Washington out there, because there's no one right now on Dallas that pulls a defense. Najee Marshall is making shots anyway. Spencer Dinwiddie is trying to create for others, but there's just not enough gravity there. AD is going to pull some bodies. PJ is not really going to pull some bodies, but he's going to at least keep people honest. Does Max Christie do enough at that point? I don't know, maybe, but that's why he's on the watch list. Klay Thompson is also on the watch list. It feels like he's kind of run out of gas here. He went on a pretty good stretch when everybody initially got hurt, when he was just taking a lot of shots. That number has come down pretty aggressively here over the last 2 or 3 ball games. I think he's still going to probably hit enough threes to be fantasy relevant, but man, it's rough when he doesn't, which is what you saw here in kind of the last 2 ball games in a row. I'm going to probably keep Klay on most teams where I need points and threes and free throw percent. He's not the world's worst rebounder, but hovering around 4 isn't really going to help you much. So I think, again, you're talking about kind of a specialist type. Similar, by the way, specialist appeal to like a Moses Moody, who's going to be better at steals than Klay, but Klay's going to hit more 3-pointers. If you were debating between those two guys, Klay has the better staying power because the team there's just no one that's going to take his job right now. But I don't know that either of them is a must roster in all formats. Brandon Williams on that same team, we have to wait and see what his contractual situation amounts to, so I don't think that I would add him until we get a little bit more idea of what's going on there. But he has a damn usage vacuum when he's on the floor. Davion Mitchell in Miami has had a couple good ball games in a row off the bench, which to me says it's almost definitely not sustainable, but we'll keep an eye on it in case that earns him a starting job again. And then Luke Kennard, who we talked about earlier in the show, he's on my watch list. I thought he would be a guy I'd play with John Moran out, and I did in a couple of spots and kind of got semi-burned by it yesterday. He wasn't terrible, but he also wasn't good. But I'm not going to start him again against the games cap until I see him back in the starting lineup, which he was not yesterday. And that is your show. Damian Lillard being, of course, the top story, and then all those ads and near ads and whatever as we piddle our way through silly season. Today is a streaming episode coming up. That's the second episode today here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. That'll drop probably in about 2.5 hours from now. We'll take a look at the streaming options tonight, Wednesday, and tomorrow, Thursday, and that'll allow us again to skip the streaming show tomorrow and do one for Friday and across the weekend. Then, hope you guys enjoyed our sort of like biggest winners of each round episode yesterday. I'd like to do another sort of specialist type of show again tomorrow. Just to keep things mixed up. I had a grand plan of doing like 35 of these streaming episodes, but after 3 straight weeks of it, I got to do something else in between or my brain's going to explode. So thanks for bearing with me on that. Subscribe to Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, where we've pushed safely past the 7,100 threshold, and now we'll see if we can get to 7,150 before the season ends. I know it's slow growth at this point, but every one of you matters, especially as we start to think about August and all the amazing stuff that's going to be happening here at Old Man Squad that I can tell you about basically on the last day of the regular season before an off season of shows. This channel is going to be well populated through the off season with a bunch of different types of shows, and I can't wait to tell you all about those. So do hit that subscribe button, like the YouTube video, rate on Apple or Spotify, and I am Dan, and this is Old Man Squad. And I will see you again in a couple hours with a streamy episode for you head-to-head maniacs who are still playing right now. Thanks, everybody. Toodaloo.